Did you ever watch the original version of that show, Full House? You know the youngest daughter, Michelle?
Happy birthday to me!
Did you know she was played by two different actresses? They're twin sisters. And the show would switch between them, and for the most part, we the viewers couldn't tell.
You got it, dude!
Let me explain that again, but with some math terms. The twin sisters are equal, and they both perform the same function, or we could say the same operation, in this case, acting. And whenever the show wanted, they could substitute in one sister for the other to perform that operation. So they take out one sister, put one sister in, and they can do that because they're equal.
Ready? Ready.
In math, we can do the same thing. If we have two things that are equal, then we can substitute in one for the other and perform the correct operations. And that's what we're going to do today. Before we get into that though, let's review a couple things. So far we've discussed mathematical expressions and order of operations. If you remember, mathematical expressions are those phrases that involve numbers and variables and operations. The order of operations is PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. And that's how we simplify expressions. In this lesson, we're going to combine them in a way. You'll be given a mathematical expression with a variable, you'll make a substitution, and then you'll use order of operations to simplify. Let's first talk about this word evaluating. It's similar to simplifying like we talked about last time, but just a small difference. Okay, so let's look at it. To evaluate an expression, you must first replace each variable with a number. And so in this lesson, we'll be looking at expressions. Remember that involve numbers, variables, and operations, and we'll be taking out variables and putting in numbers to simplify, and that's the process of evaluating. And once we've done that, once we have replaced a variable with a number, then we use the order of operations to simplify. So just like what we learned in the last lesson, except we'll have to start by plugging in a number for a variable. This act of replacing a variable with a number is called substitution. So this is just where we put the number in for the variable. Okay, we substitute it in. So let's look at some examples to see how this works. So if we look at this first example, it says to evaluate the expression. Okay? So that, remember, that evaluate word tells us we're going to have to plug something into our expression and then simplify it using order of operations. Okay? So which part's our expression? Well, this part before the comma here, 7x, that's our expression. Remember, expressions involve numbers, variables, and operations. And so that's our expression. This other part after the comma where it says 4x equals 5, that's telling us what we're going to plug in or replace the variable with. Okay? It's telling us that x is equal to 5, that x is the same thing as 5. So where we see x, we can also say that, okay, we could put 5 in there. Okay? That we can replace them because they're equal to each other. Okay? Substitute them in one or the other. Okay? They're the same. So to do that, let's rewrite it right here. Let's understand what operation we're working with. Okay, what's going on in this expression. So remember, when you have a variable, a number and a variable pushed together like that, that means multiplication. Okay? So we are multiplying the 7 times the x. Okay? And so now let's plug in our number for our variable. Remember, it says x equals 5. So we're going to replace 5. We're going to replace x with the 5, okay, and put the 5 in place there. Now we want to be careful how we write that. Okay. So I'm going to write the 7 because we haven't done anything to it. But we're taking out the x, okay, and we're plugging in the 5. Okay. But to write that, I'm going to put it in parentheses. And that's because if I didn't put it in parentheses, it would look like this, right? And if I just replace them flat out without anything else, well, that could get really confusing, right? Because it just looks like a 75. So we don't want to do that. We want to put that 5 in parentheses to help us remember that we're multiplying. Okay? And remember, parentheses, when you have a number in front of parentheses like that, that means multiplying. So here I have 7 times 5. So after I've replaced my variable with my number, okay, x was equal to 5, and so I went from, instead of x, I went to 5. Okay? So it's now 7x, or 7 times x, it's now 7 times 5. And what's 7 times 5? 35. Okay? And so that would be your answer. So after we plug in that number, we can evaluate it or simplify it using order of operations, just like what we've learned before. Remember, the variable represents an unknown. And as it is in that expression 7x, there's not a whole lot we can do with it. But once we know what it is, then we can start to work with it. It's like that show Iron Chef. The chefs don't really know what they can do until the secret ingredient is revealed.
Today's secret ingredient is...
Once that ingredient is known, then they can figure out what they need to do. So 7x, in a way, is what we're wanting to cook or to evaluate. And x is our secret ingredient. And so once we're told that x is equal to 5, and that's known, then we can start to work with that expression. All right, let's look at some more examples. So we're going to evaluate this expression 3n plus 2, okay, for n is equal to 7. Again, here's our expression, 3n plus 2, and here's what we're going to plug in or replace the variable with. It says n is equal to 7, so n and 7 are the same thing, so we can substitute them in for each other. So we've got 3n plus 2, and I'm going to substitute in, if n is equal to 7, I can plug that in for n. Okay? And so just like before, I'm going to put that in parentheses so that I remember that it's being multiplied. Remember, 3n is 3 times n, so I'm going to put that 7 in parentheses because it's 3 times 7, and then plus 2. And then do order of operations. Order of operations tells us what to do what first. We've got multiplication and addition here. So which one should we do first? Multiplication, right? That comes before addition and subtraction. So 3 times 7 is 21, and we still have the plus 2. And 21 plus 2 is 23. And that would be your final answer. Okay? So we plug in the value that they give us, so n is equal to 7, so we plug that in, and then we simplified using order of operations. Okay, let's look at another one. All right, so this one, we have the expression x, y, z, okay, all the letters pushed together like that. What operation's going on there? Multiplication. Okay? Whenever we have variables and numbers just pushed together like that, or even if it's just all variables, that's multiplication. So it's x times y times z. And then we have x equal to 2, y equal to 3, z equal to 5. So we're actually going to plug in all of those. Remember, it's just telling us what that variable is equal to, and so we can replace it with that number. So I have x times y times z. So let's replace x first. If x is equal to 2, then I can plug it in for 2. And you could put it in parentheses there to remind you that it's separate from the others. If y is equal to 3, then I can plug in 3. So it's 2 times 3. And then z is equal to 5. So I plug in 5. And remember, the parentheses is just reminding me that all of this is being multiplied. Remember, if you just have a single number in parentheses, it's being multiplied with what's outside of it. So this is 2 times 3 times 5. Okay, 2 times 3 times 5. We'll just take it one at a time. So let's do 2 times 3 first. Okay, 2 times 3 is 6, and then it's still times 5. And then 6 times 5 is 30. So we had our expression up here. We were told what all the variables are equal to, and so we plugged them in right here. Let's look at one last example. Okay, so we're going to evaluate this expression, 9 plus y divided by x. 9 plus y divided by x when y is equal to 7 and x is equal to 4. Okay. So we've got 9 plus y divided by x. And you don't necessarily have to rewrite it every time. I'm just doing that because it kind of helps you to look at it again and see it in a different way when we write it. So we know y is equal to 7, and so I'm going to plug in that. So 9 plus 7. So notice how it was plus y, and because y is equal to 7, I keep everything else the same. The 9 is the same, the plus is the same, but instead of y, I put 7. And then divided by, that divided line is still the same. If x is equal to 4, so instead of putting x here, I'm going to put 4, because that's what x is equal to, divided by 4. And then simplify. Remember, when you have this line that divides the top from the bottom, so you do those separately. So I'm going to do what's on top, and then I'll work with what's on bottom. So I have 9 plus 7 is 16, and then divided by 4 is still there. And remember, once you're down to just a single number on top and a single number on bottom, this is a division line. Okay? It's a division. So this is 16 divided by 4, so that's 4. Okay? And so that would be your final answer. So in all of this, what did we do? We look at our expression that is given to us. It's got numbers, variables, and operations. We look at what they're telling us the variable is equal to. So if y is equal to 7, we plug that in for y, plug 7 in for y. And if x is equal to 4, we're going to plug that in for x. Okay? And so then we have an expression with just numbers and operations, no variables, because we replaced with the variables. And then we'll use order of operations to simplify, okay, down to our final answer. Replacing variables with numbers is something you'll do a lot in algebra, so we want to make sure you're comfortable with it. But it does take some practice, so you'll need to practice. The more that you do it, the better you'll get at it.
Scallop! Mushrooms! Crab! Cheese.